right.
Beware.
Today we're going to speak about speaking bad about people, and it's okay to speak bad about people when they're not here. So we're only not going to speak bad about the people that are here. I'm pretty sure that's the mitzvah in the Torah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
If they don't hear it, what difference does it make?
Exactly. What could be?
If a tree falls in the forest,
There you go.
Did he really?
There you go. Right.
Well, it depends on how you ask the question. Does
All right.
it make a sound or does it make a noise?
Or the famous one: if a man has an opinion and his wife is not around, is he still wrong? Right. Okay. So today.
Hand clapping.
Yeah, the discussion today is going to be about gossip, and gossip is a very big part of this week's Torah portion because this week talks about the plague of tzeras. Tzeras is usually called leprosy. It's a mistranslation because leprosy is
It's a bacterial disease.
that we know that we can treat. But tzaras wasn't like that. Tzaras, actually, we're going to read about Maimonides. It says it was a spiritual disease that a person had some rot in them, and that God was trying to send them a message to improve. Now, how are you going to send them a message? Through a physical ailment that presented either on the person's skin, on the person's hair, person's clothing, or on the person's home. So by the way, you should know, by the way, being bald in this week's part, it's a very big part. It's a double parsha this week. So when you're coming to shul, be patient. It's a long parsha, and if you
me up at 10:30 or so.
if you're learning and if you're trying to understand it, it's very complicated. Some of the very complicated law in this week's parsha. So the first half is how the person is declared impure, the first portion is how a person is declared impure. The second portion is all about how the person is purified once the leprosy has gone away. But it's a very interesting parsha. But so the rabbis tell us what was the main rot that God was trying to get the person to stop or to stay away from was gossip. Gossip was the main cause that led to tzaras or tzaraat, if you're saying. So now the question for discussion is, how do we avoid gossip? Again, it depends. Some people, he's a bad guy. It's okay, right? So you see on the screen is white lesions, but it wasn't only white. It could be reddish. It's a bunch of different colors depending on the skin. Because white, if you have white hair, that's not a sign of tzaras. It's a sign of you're old, or you have some problem with pigment. So in the hair, it was like yellowish. It was discoloration of skin. So the question is, how do we stay away from it? So as always, we are going to focus on a Rashi, and we have a lot of rules to keep in mind. It's only for one Rashi, but we have, I think, 5 rules. We're gonna or 4 rules. Number 1, Rashi thinks very highly of us. He assumes that we remember everything we learned until now. I told you, Rashi thought a lot higher of us than we think of ourselves. Number 2, Rashi always seeks an explanation that's consistent with the basic understanding of the verse. Rashi prefers not to get into Kabbalistic or Midrashic unless he really needs to. Stick with the basics. Number 3, Rashi addresses every textual discrepancy unless either there is no discrepancy, in your mind it is, but it's not, or it's already been addressed, or you'll wait and see, you'll figure it out. And number 4, when he does quote the teaching of our stages, he often adapts it to the most literal passage of the reading of the passage. When Rashi quotes something, but then changes something, there's got to be a reason. So number 4 will be understood. Rule number 4 will be understood as we go around. Okay, so text number 1 is a very long text. You can read it, but basically, like I said, tzaras was a biblical or a temple times malady. It could be in the person's skin. He has either white blotches or reddish with black hair in the middle. or had it in his hair, in his clothing, in his home. Today we're going to talk about the final one discussed in this week's portion. It's all the way at the end, actually, of the second portion. It's the tzaraat in the person's home. Now, the way it worked is a person noticed these spots, or in English, I think they translate as lesions, some kind of discoloration on the walls of his home. He came to the kohen and he said, "Listen, I have these spots. I want you to come check them out." According to the Torah, only a kohen can declare something pure and impure. Why that is, that's not for tonight's class. But only a kohen. So even if the home belongs to the greatest rabbi, the most knowledgeable rabbi, if he is not a kohen, he cannot declare the home pure, or not only the home, anything. In the case of, I'm talking about tzaraat specifically, I'm talking about other forms of impurity. So the man should come to the kohen and says, "Listen, Mr. Kohen, I have these lesions, these growths, colorations on my wall. Come check them out." Kohen comes. He said, "This doesn't look good, guys. So we're going to, what do you call it when you not condemn, but lock up the house for condemns when you destroy it. We're going to seclude the house, lock up the house, sequester the house for 6 days. Now, what you should do before we lock up the house is take everything out of the house, because if the house is rendered impure, then everything inside it becomes impure." So he says, "Guys, take out all your furniture, everything, take out everything. And if he comes back 6 days later, and the spot has grown, oh boy, then you're in trouble. Then what he does is he would take out the stones, put new stones, come back 7 days later. If the stones, we're saying stones because this is Israel, right? Most houses are built out of stone. If the growth came back, then the house is condemned and we destroy the entire house. If it gets lighter, then you scrape off the discoloration, right? Or if it doesn't come back, right, then there's a little bit of a purification. So sometimes they have to replace a few stones. Sometimes they have to condemn the house, and the house is destroyed. That's pretty much what text 1 deals with. And they have to throw all the stones out to the outside the city in a place that's impure. In fact, according to the Torah, leprosy or tzaraat is a very, very strong level of impurity. You know, in impurity, we got into it in last week's parsha. I'm sure everybody remembers last week's parsha.
Word for word.
I'm an old person. I don't remember.
It's only Monday, Barbara. Come on.
I don't remember my name. I'm supposed to
Barbara.
remember.
Yeah.
She turned.
See, there you go. So in the end of last week's parsha, we got into the purity and impurity of metal vessels and earthenware vessels. But there are different levels of impurity. So we have from last week's parsha, if you remember, Aaron's 2 sons die. So if a person touches a dead body, you're impure for 7 days. What if you touched a person that touched a person? You're not impure for 7 days. You're impure.
You got the cooties.
No, he is. The person.
Pure for 3.5 days.
No, you're pure for 1 day. It's a good bet. You're pure for 1 day, right? And a vessel. Right.
You're saying that somebody touches a dead body, they become impure, but like at the funeral homes and stuff, they have to prepare the body and put it in the...
They're impure for 7 days.
So they're impure for
No. This is a very good question, but this is what we're talking about in temple times.
Oh, okay.
These days, everybody's impure.
Oh.
That's one of the reasons why.
Okay.
No. It's a very good question. This is one of the reasons why we're not allowed to go on the Temple Mount. So one of the things Mashiach is going to do, there's been 9 red heifers, red cows. The red cow is part of Duma was used as a purification for anyone who touches his body. So one of the things Mashiach is going to do, he's going to do the 10. That's why anytime you pay attention to the Jewish news, there's ever a red cow born, and there are here and there. I mean, every few to 5, 10, 20 years, and people go crazy. Oh, Mashiach's coming, because one of the things Mashiach is going to have to do before we can go to the Temple Mount is we're going to need to be purified. I don't know, on a site, I don't know if you saw this, someone put out for Pesach a graphic, a video of like the golden mosque, the good dome of the rock, like transforming in fire, and all of a sudden, like out of the fire, the Beis Hamikdash. It somehow, this video went around by Pesach time, and the Arabs saw it, and they went nuts. They were not happy about it. But yeah, Mashiach's going to come. So regardless, that's why it's irrelevant to go up on the Temple Mount, because even if it belongs to you, you can't go there anyways. Now, I will say that there is only one service you can do if everyone's impure, and that is the Passover sacrifice. That's why, if you remember, the Rebbe said that on Erev Pesach, people shouldn't be inside the old city, because if you're there, it's a question of you're allowed to bring it because everyone's impure. Anyway, but there are different levels of impurity. The level of a leper is equal to a dead body. That's how impure. So let's say a person touches the dead body. So let's say you have Reuven, right? Reuven touched the dead body. We're not going to give the dead body a name, okay? So Reuven is impure for 7 days. Right now, Reuven can impurify food, he can impurify people, he can impurify vessels. Shimon touches Reuven, so Shimon is impure. Now, what could Shimon impurify? Right, he can purify food, but he can't purify people. He can purify food, he can't purify vessels. It depends. So as they go further away from the infection, the impurity loses its intensity. Okay, this is all, by the way, is very complicated law. The whole tractate of Mishnayos. In fact, one of the things it says that in the times of King Chizkiyahu, even the children were well versed in the laws of purity and impurity. It's very complex. That's why there's so many mikvahs. When they're excavating in Israel, they always find the mikvahs because, it's not just for the woman go to the mikvah. It has to do with, if you're going on the Temple Mount, you have to go to the mikvah. And there's many different types of impurity, by the way. You touch a dead animal, that's not kosher. You touch an animal, it's not kosher. Dead animal, right? A person's dog died, and he's impure for a day. So you have to go to the mikvah, right? You know what I'm saying? You caught a rat in your house, whatever it is. Pick up the rat. You tell me, gotta go to the mikvah, right? I'm saying. So now a Metzora, or anything to do with Metzoras, is a very heavy level of impurity. So it was very bad. It was very bad, and actually the Torah says that first Hashem would bring tzaras on this person's clothing. Clothing he can take off, try to get the person to improve. Then he would bring it on his hair. You could shave your hair, so to speak, right? You're not allowed to. But then on his skin, the worst a person can have it is on his skin, because he had no idea when he's going to be healed. You could have tzaras for, I don't know, for the whole life. Yeah, I'm familiar with the story with Elisha and the king. He told him to bathe in the Jericho River, not Jericho River, in the Jordan River. Sorry, next to Jericho 7 times. I think the Christians come up with this idea of bathing in the Jordan River. Is a story in Tanakh with Eliyahu Navi. The king was a leper, and they told him to go see this rabbi. He's a great rabbi, and they said, "How can you help me?" He said, "Listen, Elisha is not any rabbi. You want to read some crazy stories? You read the stories of Eliyahu and Elisha and kings telling you amazing stories." Anyway, so having tzaras, a person having tzaras either on his home, on his clothing, on his hair, on his skin, was a very bad news. It was bad. Either a person, his house could lose his house, and even if he got his house back, imagine having to take all your stuff out and putting it all back in. Do you remember the last time you moved? Remember moving? Moving, and I remember when I moved from my townhouse, it was 1,500 square feet, right? And I moved to my first house, right? And I said, I'm not going to hire a mover. I'll do it myself. The townhouse. How much stuff can there be? I told Cyril. And we got a 20-foot truck from U-Haul. I said, how much stuff can we fit in a tiny house? We're going back and forth. And we moved from the house. I was smart. I hired a mover, but I was paying them by the hour. So I helped. And one mover hurt his elbow, but I still paid him. I don't know why. The guy wasn't working there. But anyway, but even just to take all your stuff out of your house and put all the stuff back in, that's a tremendous. You know the story of the guy. Yeah, the guy came to the rabbi. and said, I can't take it anymore. You know, my house is too small. I have a wife and kids, and this and that. Life is terrible. I need a blessing. So the rabbi says, bring chickens into the house. Rabbi, I told you to bring chickens. So Rabbi says, brings chickens. Comes back, Rabbi, I'm dying, the noise. Says, you have a cow? Yeah, bring it inside. So Rabbi said, brings it inside. Right? And then 3 weeks, brings animals. Then he calls it, Rabbi, I can't. There's feathers, there's noises. Okay, take out the cow. Right? And after he took out the cow and the chickens and the ducks, Rabbi, my house is huge. It's amazing. Rabbi, you're a genius, right? But taking everything out of the house was a big pain. So, which comes as a shock that the Torah uses. Look at text number 2. That the Torah uses the words "v'nasati nega tzaras." It's actually, if you go back to text number 1 for a second, you look at verse 34, text number 1. Yeah, go back here. It's the first verse. It's the first verse of text number 1. It says, "You're going to come to the land of Canaan, and I'm going to." It's a prediction, not if you sin or something. And I am going to place tzaraat in your house. It's almost like good news. Hashem saying, by the way, when you come there, this is going to happen to you. Now Rashi is asking the obvious question: why would Hashem tell us that? It's almost like, I know you're going to sin. In the other forms of leprosy, there's no prediction. It says, if a person will contract tzaraat, then he goes to the kohen. But over here, it seems like more definite, more. And also, he's saying, oh, by the way, when you come to Israel, I'm going to destroy your house. Smile, right? It doesn't seem to make sense. The wording in the verse seems to connote and predict a positive event, when the end of the verse is tzaraat is a negative event. So Rashi quotes the Medrash, and he says, go back to text 2a, and says it actually was good news. Why? Because it's important to know that the fact that the Jewish people were coming to the land of Canaan, that wasn't a secret. It was famous news. How? I don't know. I can't imagine Avram walking around saying, by the way, a few hundred years, the land's mine. I don't know how everyone knew, but people knew that God made a covenant with Avram, and He told him, your children are going to go to a foreign land. They're going to be oppressed. I'm going to bring them back, and I'm going to bring them back. It's going to be amazing, and everything's going to be great. In fact, if you remember the story with Levi and Shimon, when they go and they raid the city of Shechem for kidnapping and violating the sister Dinah, Yaakov gets so angry at them. Why did Yaakov get so angry at them? Did they not do something terrible? And did the city of Shechem not harbor a terrible people? Right? So Yaakov says, bless you. So Yaakov says one of the reasons why he's angry is because the people of the land are going to think that they're trying to fulfill the prophecy to Avram now, when it's not the time. They're going to think, hey, Yaakov and his family, they're trying to inherit the land now, when Yaakov said that's not the time. They're going to misinterpret the events. And the brothers say, how they think that that's not our problem. We're not going to let a Jewish girl be mistreated. But everybody knew that the Jewish people are coming back to the land, and they're going to inherit the land. So that Rashi says that the Amorites, Amorim, they planned ahead. They figured the Jewish people will come, they'll settle, and either we'll kick them out, we'll wage war, I don't know, or they'll sin, whatever their plan was. We'll hide the treasure inside the walls, and then to be retrieved at a later time. I'll put it in the Swiss bank account. Pardon the dark joke.
Like Swiss cheese, there's holes.
So if you're looking at this, a bunch of questions should pop out into your mind. If you're looking at Rashi's explanation. Number uno. Oh, so first of all, finding tzaraat on the walls was a blessing in disguise. If I told you, by the way, you have to take all your furniture out, but there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You get a lot of money, you do it, right? If I told you, empty out all your furniture, and you'll find a couple $100,000 worth. You do it, right? Yeah. So, it may be, it may be destroying the house is a bad thing, but you get to. So here comes.
Bobby.
So here we have. See, here we have a bunch of questions. Number one. It says the Jewish people were in the desert for 40 years. Yeah. Let's go back here. Let's go back. Let's go back to text A. 1 second. Bring up text A. Oop. 2A. Okay. The Jewish people were in the desert for 40 years. Why did the Amorites hide their gold 40 years in advance? Hide it 2 years before, right? The old joke when the guy is giving a whole thing of world, the world's going to come to an end because of global warming and the sun's going to run out of gas, right? And the sun's going to continue to exist in 500 billion years. So the guy gets up and says, "Guys, what's everyone sitting here? Let's go, guys! Come on, get up! We got to do something." The person says, "Dude, relax. We still have 500 billion years." "Oh, 500 billion? I'm sorry, I thought you said 500 million." Right? So 40 years. You have 40 years in advance. I mean, 40 years is a long time. What are they hiding it now? Number one. Number two, the land was actually called the land of Canaan, right? How many nations did the Jewish people have to kick out from the land?
A dozen.
Seven.
Seven?
There were 7 nations that had to kick out of the land, right? Why did only the Amorites hide their gold? What about the other 6?
With the
Maybe they
paradise.
didn't have any gold.
Amorites stole it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? So it says, those are the questions. Now let's go to text 2b to make the question even. I add another question to Rashi. This text 2b is the source of where Rashi gets it from. This is the Medrash, and Rashi says that Shimon Bar Yochai says when the Canaanites, he realized the Canaanites heard the Jews coming to the land, they hid their money in the houses and the fields, and God said I promised their ancestors that I would bring them in their descendants into a land filled with gold. And it says, and houses filled with all goodness. What Hashem do? He afflicted the houses with lesions. When the owner demolished the house, he found the treasure. But who told the Canaanites that the Jews were about to enter the land? How did the Canaanites know? They knew they were in the desert. So Rabbi Shmuel quotes that when Yeshua came, Yeshua didn't come for war. Yeshua came with the Jews after Moshe passed away. Yeshua was the leader, and it came time to enter the land. Yeshua said, "Guys, listen here. I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. Number one, you leave. You can leave. You can go wherever you want, live however you want. How God's going to deal with you at a later point, that's His problem. Okay? You can keep bowing down to your kumbaya thing, whatever it is later. Number two, you can stay. But if you stay, number one, you pay taxes. Number two, you have to give up all idolatry. If you stay, you live under our rule. Number three, you can fight. So why did the Canaanites hide their gold? Because they knew they were coming. It wasn't a secret. Now, there was one of the seven nations did get up and leave. By the way, they did Givoni. They did give out Givoni. They did get up and leave. So now,
Where did they go?
What?
Where did they go?
They left. So now we have more questions than Rashi. Rashi quoting this from the Medrash. So Rashi, the Medrash says the Canaanites. Rashi says the Amorites. Why did he change it? It says number two. Rashi, if you look at text 2a, if you continue comparing text 2a and 2b, Rashi says that they hid it 40 years in advance. It seems from Rashi that the Amorites hid their gold way before everyone else did. The Amorites hid it 40 years before, and the Canaanites hid it sort of right before. Why did so what tipped off the Amorites 40 years before the Jews were coming? Here we are. Right? So here we got all our questions.
Okay.
So, hey, how you doing, Ron?
All right.
So, let's get into the answer, all right? Number one, everybody knew the Jewish people were coming. How did they know? What do you mean? It was on the cover of the Jewish press.
I thought it was Paul Revere.
Paul
The
Revere.
Jewish are coming. The Jewish are coming.
Are they coming by land or by sea? So they didn't know. They put up both. The Jewish were coming by land through the sea. Huh? So Egypt was the superpower of the time. Right? Everybody knew. In fact, I was actually listening to a class this last week. It's reasonable to assume that the land of Canaan was under the rulership of Egypt. Egypt was the superpower, right? So I'm sure they found out what was going on. They knew about the 10 plagues, and they knew about the splitting of the sea. They knew all about that. You know, how the superpower Egypt was brought to its knees, and the Jewish people, they forced their own liberation. So why were the Amorites nervous? What do you mean? Of course they knew. Of course they were nervous. In fact, we say it in the Az Yashir every day, text 3a. It says, then the chieftains of Israel were startled and trembling, the powerful men of Moab and all the inhabitants of Canaan melted. Rashi explains, this is back in Parshat B'Shalach. Rashi says, oh, the Jews are coming, the Jews are coming. They said they're coming to annihilate us and take possession of their land. So, why did they why did they hide their gold? Why did they hide their gold? The Jews are coming. Now remember, when the Jewish people originally left Egypt, was the plan to stay in the desert for 40 years? No. We haven't gotten there yet, right? We're right now in Vayikra and Leviticus. The whole punishment staying in the 40 years is not until Bamidbar, Numbers, which is now. I mean, now we are in Jewish people. This is Nisan. Right now we're holding Nisan, and the story with the spies happens 5 months from now, in biblical chronological time. So when they left, they thought they were coming right away. So of course they're going to hide it right away. Now, how come only the Amorites? So I'll tell you. So the Rebbe says, easy. So the Rebbe says that the Canaanites, when they saw that the Jewish people were spending more time in the desert, right? The Jewish people were working on their tan or something. They said, we'll take our stuff out and we'll hide it, and we'll hide it later. But okay, how come the Amorites didn't take out their gold? Why did Rashi say about the Amorites were keeping their gold hidden, and not everyone else? How come they didn't take it out? They didn't take it out. Didn't take it out then. So the answer is like this. Part of the prophecy that Hashem gives Avram, I have a drinking problem. No one on camera knows what's in here. That's what makes me so mad. I can drink this amount. I handle my alcohol very well.
You can do it intravenously.
Yeah, exactly. So the question is, what took so long? So the answer is like this. When Hashem told Avram that his children are coming back, he says that they're going to come back at a certain time. Why? Before we get into the why did Hashem kick out the 7 nations? Why did Hashem demand that the 7 nations are kicked out? Because you're in my parking space? Because they're in the Jewish people's parking space?
No. They were idol worshippers and they weren't going to change their ways.
But a lot of people, yeah, you're on the right track. A lot of people were idol worshippers. But these 7 nations, they were particularly sinful. And Israel, the land of Israel, has a low tolerance for sinners. So Moshe says, by the way, to the Jewish people in Deuteronomy, you think you're so special? You're not so special. Just they're worse. He tells us straight out to the Jewish people. Because sometimes the Jewish people walk around saying, oh, by the way, this backfired at the end of the first temple. When Yirmiyahu came to the Jewish people and said, listen guys, you better shape up, you're sinning, God's getting angry. God is not getting angry. He is angry, he's going to destroy the temple, kick you out. The Jewish people said, what are you talking about? As long as they're pagans sinning worse than us, we're fine. God's not going to do anything to us. So, and Yirmiyahu says, guys, you're playing a very dangerous game. So Moshe tells the Jewish people, straight out, says the only thing you got working for you is they're worse. So that's why God's kicking them out. Who was one of the worst of the Amorites, of the 7 nations? The Amorites. So you see in text 5a, God says clearly to Avram, says, when are the Jewish people going to settle the land of Israel? It says, when the 4th generation will return here. Why? For the iniquity of the Amorites will not be completed until then. And Rashi says there on that verse, let me go back. Well, actually, let's do this. We'll go back to the slide. He says that God waits. No one gets reward or punishment until they're supposed to. That when a person has maximized their credit, it's like your credit card. How much could you spend? Well, it's credit card done. Your credit card until your max. Once you max, right? So God waits until the people or nation max out their good credit, and then he lowers the hammer. So the Jewish people.
Pay off your MasterCard with your MasterCard.
By the way, there are people that did it.
Yes.
So the Jewish people had to wait. They needed to wait to enter the land because the nations living there still had merit before they became unworthy. You know, there's a side story, by the way. We find that David HaMelech, purchases Har HaMoriah, Mount Moriah, right? Now you're thinking about yourself. Jerusalem already was an important city, right? Jerusalem's right in between, right on the border of the land of Yehuda and the land of Binyamin. Which lands were settled right away? Lands of Binyamin and the lands of Yehuda. If you look at the book of Joshua, the northern part of the country was settled a lot later, right? Some of it even after Joshua Joshua died. You think it's interesting that there's a Gentile who owns a land, owns a prominent mountain in the middle of the most important part of the country? How was it that guy that the people didn't kick him out? Because we see in the book of Joshua that the descendants, the tribe of Yehuda, Binyamin, they wage war, they kick people out, right? They conquered Shechem, they conquered Hebron. This mountain, they wait. Why? You want to know who lived in that mountain? A descendant of Avimelech. If you remember in the book of Genesis, Abraham and Isaac make a peace treaty with Avimelech and they say, "Don't do any bad to me, to my children, my grandchildren." This guy was a grandchild of Avimelech, and you had to wait. You had to wait because they made a treaty, right? And you can't break the law. So now, which of the 7 nations maxed out their good credit card, their American Express Gold Platinum, good credit card first? The Amorites. The Amorites. Who's conquered first? The Amorites. Interesting. Where did mostly the Amorites live? On the East Bank. They lived in the East Bank of the Jordan. So who conquers the Amorites? Not even Yeshua. Moshe conquers that. Look at text number 6. So the David Pardo says the measure of the Amorites filled before the others. This is why Moshe captured the land, while the other nations were not conquered until later in Yeshua's time. So he says. So now why does Rashi mention Amorites? Simple. Let's see if we have not yet. So why did he do that? Because the Amorites knew they'd be first, because the Jewish people were coming first, and they didn't know when the Jewish people would come. So now you know why it was that Rashi quotes the Amorites. Now you know why they hid it for so long. They had no idea why Rashi was that. When the Jewish people were coming. All right. So I think so far we've answered all the questions. Okay. Now let's get into the lesson. All right. If you guys don't want a lesson, you guys want to keep speaking Lashon Hara, you can leave now.
Did you hear the one?
Right? Or if you have anything bad to say about anyone, speak now, forever hold your peace. Right?
Can we talk about politicians?
No.
No, they deserve it. That's not Lashon Hara. That's all right.
That's facts.
Yeah, exactly. Right? How do you know when a politician's lying? When he's moving his lips. Right? Or like Jackie Mason said about George Bush Sr. Said, "Read my lips. I will not raise taxes." I read his lips. You know what they said? Balls. All right. So what's getting into what's so bad about Lashon Hara? I mean, we can spend a long time. We can give a whole year's class on the maladies and the terrible and the terrible effects of Lashon Hara. But it's interesting that out of all the bad things that Hashem sent punishments for, Lashon Hara. It's interesting. There's a lot of bad things you can do: kill, steal, I don't know, maim, I don't know, eat chazer, I don't know, whatever it is. But it's interesting that Hashem particularly targeted Lashon Hara, and that's for a reason. Gossip. Let's take a look at what Maimonides says. The change that affected a person was a cause of tzaraat. It was a sign. It was a wondrous. It wasn't a natural thing. The tzaraat was a wonder to warn the Jewish people against speaking Lashon Hara. Why? Because when a person eats chazer, God forbid, who's he harming?
The pig.
Oh yeah,
You don't know.
himself, right? I mean, it's a relationship between him and God, right? And when a person steals, there's a tangible, right? You had $100, now you don't have $100. Why? Because the guy stole it, right? A person hurts another person. But when it comes to speech, it's kind of like, what I say? I didn't say anything. And we're gonna go on now the rest of the class. Most time, how does gossip happen? Usually, a person doesn't say, "Larry, come, let's speak Lashon Hara. You heard about that guy? Bad guy. Check. Next. You heard about that guy? Shbach. Next. You know what I'm saying? It usually doesn't happen that way. Usually, how does gossip happen? You're talking, whatever it is. Oh, by the way, I heard this guy, and you say, hey, you're speaking gossip. It's very bad what you're doing. You say, whoa, I ain't saying anything. We're just sitting there talking baseball, and so that's the problem. Lashon Hara is a very, very, I don't know what the term I'm looking for. It's a very loosey-goosey kind of avera. It's not beginning and end, like breaking Shabbos or eating chazer or causing harm, and it eats away. It's a cancer that eats away at the fabric of a community. And the truth is, we find this a few times. Hashem said, listen, I can handle if you sin against me. I don't like it. I think it's a chutzpah that here I'm giving you everything, and you're sinning against me, but I'm not threatened by it. It's for you. But when there's a problem in the community, God says that's got to stop. So we see that Hashem sends such a powerful ailment to tell the people, you gotta stop speaking Lashon Hara. And look how Maimonides says. Look how he describes.
Get rid of social media.
I actually saw today. A guy says it shouldn't be called social media. It should be called unsocial media, because anything but social. The guy was talking about all the terrible things that because of social media. Yeah. Look at how Maimonides says. What happens? How Lashon Hara begins. He says, "This is the path that is followed by the gathering of wicked fools. They begin speaking about baseball, right? Excessively about empty matters. And then what happens? The conversation doesn't just stop in baseball. And how long can you talk about baseball and hockey and basketball, whatever it is, right? How long? So then they start speaking about negatively about the righteous. Oh, he's this rabbi, it said." Finally, they come accustomed to speaking against the prophets and casting aspersions on the words. Thus, the speech of the wicked is caused by loitering on the street corners, frequenting assemblies of commoners, and spending time at parties of drunkards. It begins when because you're not being productive and you're just speaking. What am I doing anything? I'm just shoving the bull. But then the conversation usually doesn't end up just innocent. Like King Solomon says, sin is unavoidable, when there are many words. Thus, when the wise seal their lips. Or I forgot who it was that said, says it's better to leave your mouth shut and leave people in doubt whether you're a fool, and to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Right? And this is this is the thing. When do we do things wrong? Doing things wrong is usually not a purposeful direct action. No one gets up and says, I don't care about God. I'm going to have, a hamburger, extra cheese, right? And today I'm going to be a big sinner. Usually people don't work that way. Usually it happens that a guy's saying, I want to do A, B, and C. I want to look at A, B, and C, or sin usually happens when we're not being focused and we're not being purpose-driven. We'll talk about this in Tanya at great length. The more you're productive, the less you have time to screw up. That's the way life is. In chapter 34 of Tehillim, King David says, who is a man who desires life? He says, Sur mira, turn away from evil, v'aseh tov. It says, the tzar l'shon chamera, guard your lips from speaking evil. But Chassidus says, if we focus on aseh tov, doing good, if you are occupied with doing good means being productive, then automatically you're not sur mira. You're automatically staying away from evil, right? That's the way life is. It's the same thing is, where does stupid thoughts come from? Stupid thoughts come from when you're not thinking. If you're learning something, usually, and you're concentrating, you're focused. Usually, in your focus, you don't have some ridiculous thought. Like if you see text 32, the Rebbe writes in Hayim Yom, says, sinful and immoral and dumb thoughts come from a pusta cup. You know what pust means? Pust means empty. A pusta cup, an empty vessel. When the cup is filled with if I come to you with strawberry berry drink, and I want to pour you, say, no, my cup is already filled with water. Can't, right? When can I put stupidity in your cup? When your cup's empty. Fill your head with good, you won't have time for stupidity. It's a very good. You know what that's saying? Give the job to busy people. You want something done? Why? Because busy people, they're doing. And I know some people, by the way, that I more than one. Unfortunately, they don't have a job. Not so much because they can't, because they don't. And you ask them to do something, and it's like it's a whole. They can't. Right? They can't get up and get motivated because they're so used to doing nothing, and their day is filled with doing nothing. When you try to give them something productive, it turns into a whole thing. So this is what the Rebbe says in text number 9. A very powerful thing. So Mavur, it's explained. The reason for alien or evil thoughts are the puskite from cup, the emptiness of your head. When your intellect is busy, then your thought has what to do. Where do dreams come from? Your brain doesn't shut off. Your consciousness shuts off. When you go to sleep, your consciousness shuts off, but your brain never shuts off. That's why you have dreams. And that's why your dreams don't make any logical sense. Because your consciousness shuts off. But if your brain is always occupied, then your brain has no reason to go shop in stupidity. So now, every single, keeping in mind, we said many times, that every single person and every single entity in the Torah is a template. So the Amorites are a template. Now, in Hebrew, they're called the Emorim. Aleph, Mem, Resh. In fact, their name has the same root as Omar, to say. What was the sin? I mean, all the 7 nations sinned a lot. But what was the sin that the Amorites excelled in?
Blasphemy.
No, blasphemy. Lashon hara. Lashon hara. Well, they're pagans. Gossip. So this is what that Torah is saying. You see how much, I mean, the God didn't despise the 7 nations, but what we really hated was blasphemy. I mean, not blasphemy. Sorry, now you screwed me up. Was lashon hara, gossip, and always your fault. And now, and we see, by the way, many examples of this. Which cities does God destroy in the book of Genesis? Sodom, Gomorrah, that whole plateau. Why? It wasn't because of their sins against God. It was because of their sins against each other. That's what, and we find that there's a few of the idolatries that God really has it in for it. God generally says don't serve other gods, but He keeps signaling out Melech. There's an idolatry called Melech. You know what they used to do to Melech? They would burn people. They'd pass the people through fire. It was pretty bad. The fathers and parents would give over their kids. It was very bad. It was very gruesome. But that's how we see how much the Eibishter Hashem hates gossip. So our job is to change over the klippa, is to change the klippa of nonsense speech. And if you guys want to talk about the NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs after this, I'm kidding. No. Our job is to change the sinful speech into productive speech. Let's look at what the Alter Rebbe says in text 10b. He says that the Emory represent aimless chatter, foreign thoughts in Israel. Speaking too many words indicates stupidity. Wise people don't speak too much. They're hurt, that's why when they speak, they're hurt. The Emory represents energy that hails from the wrong side. The Moiri do not merely drive us to aimless talk. If it stopped at aimless talk, you can say, okay, big deal, we're only talking about baseball. The problem is it doesn't stop there. All speech begins in the heart with the mind thinking mindless thoughts that are foreign to Jews because they don't belong to God. The word Emoiri, which in the current tense implies constancy, it refers to an impure energy that drives us to constant chatter. The ancient, insane king traps us into thinking foreign thoughts and speaking empty words, for sin is an inevitable companion of too many words. We must remove this power from the Amiri by deliberately avoiding foreign thoughts and empty words. Instead, we must constantly think godly words. So now that we know the trouble, so our job is to try. This is hard. Is to try to be more careful, to weigh our words more carefully. Do we need to say what we need to say? Right. And like you see, we just read in Pirkei Avos this past week. So there's what Shimon, the son of Rabbi Gamliel, says. Text 11a. He said, "I never found something as healthy for the body as silence. Keep your mouth shut. Close your mouth." And says the defense for wisdom is silence. And you can go on and you can go on. There's so many things about keeping silence. And like Rambam finishes off and says, a Yid speech of a proper Jewish person is always focused on the words of Torah and wisdom. Therefore, God assists in there never and grant them the merit because of it. So this is what, by the way, I tell you a story. This story happened not too long ago. It was in Lebanon. No? There was a family that Israelis soldiers were in Lebanon. The guy's name is it was 1982. That's what it was. 1982. This guy Zachariah. It was in Lebanon, and Israelis were killed. And somebody were taken for a long time, and they never wanted to give the family back. The family was very angry at the Israeli government. Why aren't you doing more? Anyway, when Netanyahu was the prime minister, I think it was this time, And yeah, he spoke to Putin, and Putin got the body returned, and had a whole full military. That happened a few years ago. And so it was by the funeral, by the shiva. I'm not coming to shiva. I can't, because they already said shiva before. The family told Bibi Netanyahu, says, we were cursing you out and the Israeli government out for a long time. Finally, we decided, instead of speaking negative, we try to be more understanding. Running the Israeli government is a complicated job, and there's things that are way higher on the priority than getting a person's body back. And even if you did, it was a lot of red tape. What does it take to get it back? So we said, if they do it, we decided we're going to show whatever it is, appreciation. We decided to speak positively about what you're trying to do for the people. The story goes that Bibi got very emotional and said, let me tell you something. He says, Israel did something for Russia, can't tell you what. And Russia owed us big time. And I was going to meet Putin, and we made a whole list of all the different things I can ask him for. And it was like top 3. And you're getting your Zachariah's body was not on the list. And when Putin asked me what I can do, for some reason this popped into my mind, getting the body back. And Putin asked me, this is Bibi saying, it's such a big deal to get a body back. Who cares where he's buried? Said, no, you don't understand. So he said, if it's so important, I'll arrange it and put pressure on the right channels, and the body was returned. We never know. We never know what the impacts of speaking positively about a person. And the Baal Shem Tov said, when we speak lashon hara, it affects the person who's speaking it, it affects the person who's hearing it, and it affects the person who it's spoken about, even if the person is not here. And Israeli University did a famous study where they had 2 plants. It was exposed to similar sunlight. They gave it the same water, everything. The only difference was one plant they cursed at and spoke bad to, and this was a real study. And one plant they spoke positively to, and the plant they spoke negatively to, it withered and died. This was a study, it was documented.
Yeah, the third one they smoked. No.
There you go. No, the good note, not the third one.
Very common.
Not the third one, the one that was good, they smoked. All right, but your
wasn't hemp by any chance. Was it?
your words have an impact, and that's the truth. So our job.
Sometimes 2 people working this job, one person wants to get ahead, so he talks bad about the other person.
Yeah,
That's
but a person
can't do that.
Yeah, but a person thinks it's positive. Maybe it could be a positive game, but people know. People know when we speak bad about other people, people find out. If it's not today, it's not tomorrow. It comes around.
I was just going to say, you say speak positive. He's a jerk. No, Larry, speak positive. I'm positive he's a jerk.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So now what the final bit is. So our job is what we have the Emorites who represent negative energy, negative speech, and our job is to elevate it to one of our more refined abilities of speech. And just like the Jewish people found the treasures in their homes and they used it for good, that's our job. Let's look at how the Rebbe explains it in text number 12. Conversely, the hidden treasures of gold were found uniquely in Emorites' houses. This is because the ultimate purpose of tzaraat was not merely to neutralize and prevent the chatter of the wicked. Rather, it's to transform the wicked of the human power of speech. Hashem wasn't just saying, don't speak lashon hara. Hashem's trying to say your power of speech should be used for something better. Rather than negative speech, we have words and conversations about holy topics. And like Yaakov said about Shechem, interesting, he said about Shechem, when he gave it to Yosef, he says, I've snatched it from the hand of the Emorites. Words and speech that are good reveal the hidden treasures of the soul. So when we learn and we have positive thoughts end up in negative, in positive speech. Empty thoughts, empty speech ends up in negative. So our job is to transform what could be used from negative to be used for positive. Key points. We're already late for our next class. It says lesions called tzaraat would appear on the walls of people who engage in sinful speech. If the lesions persisted, then and despite all the efforts to clean them, the house had to be demolished. When the house was demolished, the homeowners often found hidden treasures buried there by the nations who had resided in Israel before the Jews arrived. Among these nations, the Amorites were the first to lose their land because their sins were particularly vile, which was particularly evil speech. And the treasures were found primarily in their homes. It's ironic that the greatest treasures were buried in the homes of the greatest offenders. It teaches us that speech, which has tremendous power for negative impact, also has tremendous power, because anything that has power for negative also has the power for good. So anything that has tremendous negative power also has tremendous positive power. One way to avoid negative speech, to walk away. Better way is to direct one's mind to be constructive. So when you're involved in constructive, you don't get pulled into the negative. Have a good week.